Welcome to an Achieving Science video. This video is all about genetic crosses. Before we begin, we need to just look at some history. We need to look at a person called Mendel, Gregor Mendel. He was an Austrian monk who was trained in both maths and natural history. He was a keen gardener, and in his work he noticed that characteristics were passed on to new generations of plants. This work became the foundation of modern genetics. Let's have a look at the experiments that he's carried out. He carried out an experiment where a tall pea plant was crossed with a dwarf pea plant, producing offspring which were all tall, so they were 100% identical. He then carried out a second experiment using this offspring. So all of the offsprings were tall pea plants, as we've said, and when he crossed them, he found that 3 of the offspring were tall and 1 was a dwarf. So therefore there was a 3-to-1 ratio, so this was different. So then he asked the question why. Well, first of all he proposed the idea that the alleles present are called the genotype, so e.g. XX, because you have 2 genes, one from mum and one from dad. He said the characteristics that were expressed were referred to as the phenotypes, so e.g. blue eyes. He said that there was a dominant allele, and that was always expressed, e.g. BB, where the capital B is the dominant allele, and that is expressed. He said that the recessive allele is only expressed if there were 2 copies present, e.g. GG, both lowercase. If 2 alleles are then the same person is homozygous for that trait. So as you can see, both alleles are the same, lowercase g and lowercase g. If the alleles are different, the person is heterozygous for that trait, so a capital and a lowercase g in this case. Now let's put this into action so it makes a little bit more sense. So the first experiment. If we took a tall pea plant and crossed it with a dwarfed pea plant, and the tall pea plant had the genotype TT, both capital letters, so double dominant homozygous. And then we took a dwarf pea plant, which has the genotype of lowercase t, so homozygous recessive. We then put it into a genetic cross, a Punnett square. Now doing this, we can see what is produced. So we can see we've got 4 different combinations that are produced, but all of these combinations are identical. As we can see, all of these contain the dominant allele, the capital T. Now this dominant allele means that they are tall, and so in conclusion, we have all tall plants, but they are all carriers because they do possess the lowercase recessive t. Now let's have a look if we took a tall pea plant and another tall pea plant. Both of these tall pea plants have the genotype of a capital T and a capital T, so homozygous dominant, where all the alleles are exactly the same. And then we can look at what is produced. Well, because all of the alleles are identical, it doesn't matter how you mix them all up, all of the offspring are going to be exactly the same. So they are all going to have the 2 dominant alleles, capital T and capital T, for all cases. Therefore, in conclusion, we have 100% genotype of capital T, capital T. This means that they are all homozygous because they possess the same alleles, and they are all tall plants. So the phenotype is tall plants. Now what would happen if we crossed a tall carrier with a tall carrier? Now for a tall carrier, the genotype will be a dominant allele and a recessive allele, so a capital T and a capital T. Now as both parents are both carriers, these will be identical. So we can now fill in our genetic cross with a capital and a lowercase t for both parents. Now we can look at what is produced. Well, first of all, we'll have two dominant alleles coming together to produce the genotype capital T, capital T. We'll then have the next genotype of T with a lowercase recessive t, and you can see the rest. Now, in conclusion, we can see if they've got the genotype capital T, capital T, they'll be tall. If they've got the genotype capital T, lowercase t, they'll be tall. If they've got two recessive alleles, they'll be dwarf. And in this situation, we can see that there is a 3-to-1 ratio of them being tall to being dwarf.